Courage is born in the moments we want to quit but choose to stay, because those are the spaces where our true strength is tested and revealed, not in the times when everything feels easy, but in the raw, exhausting, and often painful seasons where walking away would be simpler than holding on. It is in the late nights when doubt creeps in, telling us that our efforts are pointless, that no one notices the work we are doing, and that the dream is too far away, yet somehow we take one more step forward despite the weight on our shoulders. It is in the mornings when fear wakes us before the sun, whispering that we are not good enough, that failure is waiting just around the corner, and even then we rise from the bed and face the day with trembling hands and a determined heart. Courage is not loud or glamorous. It is quiet persistence, the unseen battles fought inside the heart and mind, the decision to breathe through disappointment instead of letting it define us, the willingness to stand in the middle of uncertainty without needing all the answers. It is born when the easy road tempts us to surrender, but we plant our feet firmly on the harder path because deep down we know giving up would mean betraying the very best of ourselves. Every moment of hesitation, every urge to abandon the journey, becomes the soil where resilience grows, and the choice to stay in that uncomfortable, difficult place transforms us into someone who can withstand far more than we ever imagine. Courage is not about pretending we are fearless. It is about carrying our fear with us and moving anyway, knowing that every act of staying when it would be easier to go carves a deeper well of strength inside us. The truth is, breakthroughs are often hidden behind the walls of exhaustion, failure, and frustration, and courage is what pushes us to keep pressing against those walls until cracks appear and light comes through. In those moments when we whisper to ourselves, "I can't do this anymore," and yet somehow find ourselves still trying, still hoping, still showing up, we are building a story that will not be defined by defeat. The choice to stay when we want to leave, to continue when we long to quit, is the proof that courage is not some far-off trait reserved for the extraordinary, but a daily decision sometimes made in silence, sometimes made in tears, sometimes made in exhaustion, but always made in love for what we value and who we are becoming. That is where courage is born, not in the easy victories, but in the quiet, unseen moments when we decide that even though quitting would hurt less in the moment, staying will shape us into someone unbreakable. Struggle is not a sign of weakness. It's the birthplace of resilience, because every challenge that knocks us down carries within it the chance to rise stronger than before, shaping us into someone who can endure, adapt, and keep moving forward even when the weight feels unbearable. Struggle is often misunderstood as failure, as if difficulty means we are unworthy or incapable, but in truth it is the fire that tempers our spirit, the pressure that molds us into something unbreakable, the very ground where resilience grows roots deep into our character. Every hardship we face, every moment when the path feels impossible, is not evidence of our lack but proof of our humanity, and within that humanity lies the raw material for growth. Struggle teaches us to withstand uncertainty, to sit with discomfort, to find strength not in escaping pain but in carrying it with dignity and courage. It strips away illusions of control and forces us to meet ourselves honestly, to discover that even when our knees buckle and our hearts ache, we still have the capacity to rise. Resilience is not born in the smooth seasons of life where everything falls into place. It is born in the storms where we are pushed to our limits, where tears fall freely, where giving up seems easier than continuing, but somehow we keep going anyway. Each time we stumble and choose to get back up, each time we face rejection and still dare to try again, each time we are met with loss, yet continue to hold hope, resilience is etched deeper into our being. Struggle has a way of teaching us that we are far stronger than we believed, that weakness is not in the falling but in refusing to rise, that pain can either break us or shape us depending on the choices we make in the aftermath. When life presses against us with trials we never asked for, we discover that struggle is not a thief of our strength, but a midwife to our resilience, bringing forth a version of us that would not have existed without the hardship. Struggle builds endurance, patience, humility, and courage, reminding us that setbacks are not permanent roadblocks, but stepping stones toward a deeper, more grounded strength. We do not develop resilience by avoiding the hard things. We develop it by walking through them, by carrying the weight until our muscles grow strong enough to hold more, by learning that even in our darkest nights, there is a light within us that refuses to be extinguished. Struggle, then, is not something to be ashamed of, but something to be honored, because it is the birthplace of the resilience that allows us not only to survive, but to rise again and again, no matter how many times life knocks us down. Every setback carries the seeds of strength if we're willing to face it, because hidden inside disappointment, failure, and loss are lessons and abilities that cannot be gained in comfort or ease, only in the raw reality of stumbling and finding our way back. A setback is not the end of the story but the turning point, the moment that tests our endurance and reveals our capacity to grow beyond what we thought possible. Yet too often we mistake it for defeat, when in truth it is the soil where resilience and wisdom are planted. Each failure exposes parts of ourselves we may have never known, our patience, our persistence, our ability to bend without breaking. And though the moment may feel unbearable, the strength that grows from it is unmatched. Setbacks demand that we look at our reflection without filters, that we acknowledge where we fell short, and in that honesty we find clarity, humility, and the chance to rebuild on stronger foundations. They force us to slow down, to re-examine, to refine our choices and sharpen our vision, giving us tools we would not have collected if everything had gone smoothly. Setbacks strip away illusions and comfort, and though that process is painful, it is also transformative because it forces us to step into a version of ourselves that is wiser, braver, and more capable. The strength we gain is not in avoiding the fall, but in rising from it, in choosing to keep going even when the taste of failure lingers, in daring to believe that something meaningful can still come from the rubble. Every time life sets us back, it is extending an invitation to discover resilience, to prove to ourselves that loss does not define us, and to learn that the very things that seem to break us can become the reason we rise taller. The seed of strength is planted in the very soil of hardship, watered by tears, nurtured by perseverance, and brought to life by the decision to face reality instead of running from it. When we embrace setbacks not as punishments but as teachers, we begin to see them as chapters that build character, as necessary pauses that redirect us, as training grounds for the battles ahead. It is easy to celebrate success, but it is setbacks that give success its meaning, because they remind us of the climb, the grit, and the scars that made victory possible. Strength is not handed to us. It is earned through trials, and each setback carries within it a gift we can only access by confronting it directly, by refusing to let it convince us that we are defeated, by choosing to believe that what looks like the end is only the beginning of something greater. The seed of strength is always there, waiting for us to acknowledge it, to nurture it, to trust that from the ashes of failure something powerful and unshakable can grow. And it is only when we face the setback head on that we realize the gift it carried all along. Vulnerability is not defeat, it's the path to growth and deeper power, because allowing ourselves to be seen in our uncertainty, our fears, and our imperfections is not a sign that we are weak, but rather evidence that we are brave enough to live fully and honestly. Too often, we are taught to hide our struggles, to wear armor so no one can see the cracks, but armor only weighs us down and keeps us from connecting with what truly matters. Vulnerability is the moment we admit that we don't have all the answers yet choose to keep moving. The willingness to risk rejection, failure, or judgment in the pursuit of something real. And though it feels terrifying, it is also where authentic growth begins. It takes strength to stand in front of others or even in front of ourselves and say, "I'm scared, I'm hurting, I don't know if I can do this." And then take the next step anyway, because that is where resilience is born. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open the door to connection, to empathy, and to the kind of strength that is not built on pretending to be unshakable, but on embracing our humanity fully. Vulnerability is the soil where courage grows, because there can be no true bravery without risk, no genuine growth without discomfort, and no real strength without honesty about where we stand. Every time we let ourselves be vulnerable, by asking for help, by admitting we don't know, by standing up after a failure, we expand the boundaries of what we believe we are capable of, proving that fragility and power can coexist. What looks like defeat on the surface, steers, uncertainty, moments of doubt, is actually the doorway to transformation, because when we stop hiding, we stop fighting against ourselves, and all that energy is freed for healing and growth. Vulnerability forces us to shed the illusion of perfection, and in doing so, it gives us permission to grow beyond the image we tried so hard to protect, into someone stronger, freer, and more authentic. It's in the trembling voice that still speaks, the shaking hands that still reach out, the uncertain steps that still move forward, where deeper power is forged. Vulnerability teaches us that strength is not about being untouched by struggle, but about letting struggle shape us into someone who can rise, connect, and inspire. It is not defeat to admit we are afraid. Defeat is refusing to try because of that fear. Vulnerability is the act of daring to live in the open, where we risk pain but also discover love, where we risk failure but also uncover resilience, where we risk loss but also find meaning. It is not the end of strength but the beginning of it, because the deeper power we carry does not come from avoiding pain, but from walking through it with open hands and open hearts. Learning that our cracks are not proof of brokenness, but proof that light has entered and that we have chosen growth over hiding. Hope is not passive. It's a practice we fight for every single day, because it is not something that simply appears and carries us through hard times. It is something we actively choose to cultivate, even when the world feels heavy and our hearts feel worn. Hope is not about waiting for circumstances to improve on their own. It is about waking up each morning and deciding to believe that change is possible, that pain can soften, that light can still be found even in the darkest corners. It is not a vague wish or blind optimism, but a daily commitment to look beyond what hurts and toward what can be, to focus not only on what we have lost, but on what we still have the power to build. Hope requires discipline, because despair is always easier. Despair asks nothing of us, while hope asks us to keep walking when the road is uncertain, to keep planting seeds when we may not see the harvest for years, to keep showing up with open hands even when the outcome is unknown. Every time we pick ourselves up after a setback, every time we choose kindness when bitterness tempts us, every time we dare to imagine a better tomorrow in the middle of today's struggle, we are practicing hope, strengthening it like a muscle that only grows when tested. Hope does not deny reality. It looks directly at reality with all its sharp edges and still chooses to believe that possibility exists, that growth is possible, that love is worth fighting for. It is born in small choices, like getting out of bed when grief tells us to stay down, like reaching out for connection when loneliness insists we are alone, like taking the first step toward a goal even when the finish line feels far away. Hope is active, alive, and deeply courageous, because it means daring to envision something better even when everything around us seems to argue otherwise. It is not about waiting for proof before we believe. It is about believing so strongly that our actions create the very proof we long to see. Hope is the practice of refusing to give despair the final word, refusing to let failure write the ending, refusing to accept that our story is finished when in truth it is still unfolding. To fight for hope every day is to acknowledge that life will bring storms, but storms are not forever, that even the longest nights give way to morning, that even the hardest winters carry within them the promise of spring. Hope does not mean we will never feel pain or doubt. It means we will not let pain and doubt decide the direction of our lives. To practice hope is to claim our power each day, to lean into the possibility that something better is waiting, and to keep moving forward with open eyes and open hearts, trusting that every act of hope we choose today plants the seeds of a future we cannot yet see but desperately need. I will not give up is not about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard, because the true measure of strength is not found in flawless execution, but in the willingness to rise, to return, to keep trying even when the weight of failure and fatigue presses heavily against us. Perfection tells us that we must never stumble, never break, never falter, but perseverance whispers a deeper truth, that every stumble is still movement forward, every scar is proof that we dared, every return is evidence of courage. Refusing to give up is not about waiting until conditions are perfect or until we feel ready. It is about facing the mess, the uncertainty, the fear, and still stepping into the arena, knowing we might fall again, but believing the fight is worth it. It is about honoring the power of presence, the quiet resilience of simply showing up, because progress is rarely made in leaps, but in small, repeated acts of courage that build upon one another over time. Each time we choose to show up, we tell life that it cannot defeat us with setbacks, that we will not be defined by the days we collapse, but by the days we rise again despite the collapse. It's about choosing consistency over comfort, determination over despair, and presence over the false promise of perfection. Because perfection demands an impossible standard while perseverance asks only for one more try. When we declare that we will not give up, we are promising ourselves that even when we fail, even when we fall short, even when others doubt us, we will return to the path again and again until it becomes part of who we are. The act of showing up day after day, even bruised, even uncertain, even exhausted, forges resilience in a way no easy success ever could. It proves that commitment is stronger than fear, that dedication outweighs discouragement, and that perseverance is a deeper kind of victory than perfection could ever offer. To not give up is to embrace imperfection as part of the journey, to understand that setbacks are not signs we should stop, but invitations to keep building strength, to keep discovering who we are beneath the struggle. It is about learning that greatness is not in never falling, but in the repeated rising, in the relentless return to the fight, in the quiet determination that says, I am still here, and that is enough. The courage to show up again and again, even when it's hard, transforms us from dreamers into doers, from the fragile into the resilient, from those who wait for perfection into those who create strength through persistence. And in the end, that choice to show up one more time becomes the very heartbeat of resilience, the defining rhythm of those who refuse to surrender, and the truest expression of what it means to say, I will not give up.